The smartest person in your office isn't the one with the fancy degree or the corner office. It's the one who sits quietly in meetings while everyone else reveals their hand. While your co-workers are broadcasting their next career moves on social media and complaining about their problems to anyone who will listen. This person is building an empire in silence. They understand something that most people will never learn. Transparency is not a virtue, a weakness that will cost you everything you've worked for. The difference between success and failure isn't about what you know. It's about what you keep to yourself. Most people are walking around giving away the very information that could make them rich, famous, or powerful. And they don't even realize they're doing it. They think honesty means telling everyone everything. But intelligent people know that some secrets are too valuable to share. Tonight, I'm going to show you the 3 things that successful people never tell anyone, and why keeping these secrets will change your life forever. There was a man named Marcus who owned a small electronics repair shop in downtown Detroit. Every morning he would arrive at his shop at 7 sharp, unlock the metal grate, and flip the sign from closed to open. For 12 years. Marcus had built his reputation one satisfied customer at a time. His hands could fix anything with a circuit board, and his heart was as big as his skill. But Marcus had one weakness that would cost him everything he had worked for. He believed that honesty meant telling everyone everything. He thought that transparency was always the highest virtue. He was wrong. One Tuesday morning, while sipping his usual black coffee, Marcus received a phone call that would change his life. The voice on the other end belonged to Mr. Thompson, a representative from TechCorp, one of the largest electronics manufacturers in the country. Mr. Thompson had heard about Marcus through the grapevine. Word was spreading that this small shop owner had developed something extraordinary. You see, Marcus had spent his evenings and weekends for the past 3 years working on a revolutionary repair technique. He had figured out how to restore damaged circuit boards that other technicians declared unfixable. It wasn't just a minor improvement. This technique could save electronics companies millions of dollars in replacement costs. It was breakthrough technology hiding in a modest repair shop. Mr. Thompson, schedule a meeting for the following week. Marcus was excited. This could be his big break, his ticket out of the daily grind of fixing broken phones and tablets. But here's where Marcus made his first critical error. The moment Mr. Thompson left his shop after that initial meeting, Marcus couldn't contain his excitement. He called his brother first. James, you won't believe what just happened. TechCorp wants to license my repair technique. They're talking about a contract worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. His brother congratulated him. But within an hour, James had mentioned it to his wife. She mentioned it to her sister. Her sister worked at Electromax, TechCorp's biggest competitor. Marcus then called his best friend Robert. Rob, I'm about to hit the big time. I've got this technique that can revolutionize electronics repair, and TechCorp is interested. I might be rich by Christmas. Robert was happy for his friend. But Robert also happened to play poker every Thursday with a group that included 2 engineers from various tech companies. But Marcus wasn't done sharing his good news. At the local diner where he ate lunch every day, he told Maria, the waitress who had served him for years, Maria, next week you might be serving lunch to a millionaire. I've got a meeting with TechCorp about my repair technique. Maria smiled and wished him well, but she also mentioned it to her boyfriend, who worked in patent research. By Friday of that week, Marcus received another phone call. This time it was from Electromax. They had heard rumors about his technique and wanted to schedule a meeting. Marcus was thrilled. 2 major companies competing for his innovation meant he could drive up the price. He scheduled the meeting for the day after his TechCorp meeting. The following Monday, Marcus walked into TechCorp's offices wearing his best suit, carrying a briefcase with all his documentation. But something felt different. Mr. Thompson's demeanor had changed. The warm enthusiasm from their first meeting had been replaced by a cold, businesslike attitude. Marcus Mr. Thompson said. We've done some research since our last conversation. We've discovered that your technique, while innovative, has some significant limitations that our engineers have identified. We're prepared to offer you $15,000 for the rights. Take it or leave it. Marcus was shocked. $15,000. They had discussed numbers in the hundreds of thousands just a week ago. But he kept his composure and said he needed to think about it. He had the Electromax meeting the next day. Tuesday arrived, and Marcus walked into Electromax's headquarters with renewed hope. But his hope was quickly crushed. The Electromax representative, Miss Johnson, got straight to the point. Marcus, we appreciate you coming in, but we've already developed a similar technique in-house. Our engineers worked through the weekend and found 3 different approaches that accomplished the same result. We won't be needing your services. Marcus left that meeting confused and defeated. How had they developed something similar so quickly? How had TechCorp's enthusiasm cooled so dramatically? The answer came 3 months later when Marcus received a patent rejection letter. Both TechCorp and Electromax had filed patents for techniques similar to his, citing prior art and independent development. His technique, which had taken him 3 years to perfect, was now worthless in the marketplace. Marcus had learned the hardest lesson of his life. In his excitement to share his success, he had given away the very information that would have made him successful. His transparency had become his tragedy. But this story isn't really about Marcus. It's about every single person who has ever sabotaged their own success by sharing too much, too soon, with too many people. It's about the fundamental misunderstanding that most people have about intelligence and wisdom. You see, intelligence isn't just about what you know. Intelligence is about what you keep to yourself. Wisdom isn't just about understanding the world around you. Wisdom is about understanding when to speak and when to remain silent. Most people believe that sharing everything is a sign of authenticity, of being genuine and trustworthy. But what they don't understand is that in a world where information is power, giving away information without strategic purpose is giving away your power. There are 3 specific things that intelligent people never share with anyone. And tonight I'm going to show you exactly what those 3 things are and why keeping them to yourself will transform your life in ways you never thought possible. The first thing an intelligent person never shares is their next move. The second thing they never share is their struggles. And the third thing they never share is their good deeds. These 3 secrets, when properly understood and applied, will give you an advantage that most people will never have. They will protect you from the Marcus situation. They will shield you from those who would use your transparency against you. But before we go into each of these secrets, you need to understand something fundamental about human nature. Most people are not plotting against you, but they're not necessarily rooting for your success either. When you share your plans, your struggles, or your good deeds, you're putting information into the world that can and will be used in ways you never intended. Marcus thought he was sharing good news with people who cared about him. But information has a life of its own. It spreads, it mutates. It finds its way into the hands of people who have different agendas than yours. This is why intelligent people have learned to master the art of strategic silence. They understand that in the game of life, the cards you don't show are often more valuable than the cards you do show. Let me tell you about Rebecca Martinez, a woman who understood the power of keeping her next move to herself. Rebecca worked as a mid-level manager at a marketing firm in Phoenix, but she had bigger dreams. Every evening after work, she would sit at her kitchen table and work on her business plan for a digital marketing consultancy that would specialize in helping small businesses compete with larger corporations. Rebecca was brilliant. She had identified a gap in the market that others had missed. While big marketing firms focused on big clients and small firms struggled to deliver sophisticated strategies, Rebecca had developed a system that could provide enterprise-level marketing strategies to small businesses at affordable prices. She had the skills, the plan, and the determination to make it work. But Rebecca had learned something that Marcus never understood. She had learned it from her grandfather, who was a chess master. When Rebecca was 12 years old, her grandfather taught her the most important lesson about strategy she would ever learn. Miha, he said, placing his weathered hand on her shoulder as they sat in front of his old wooden chessboard. The moment you tell your opponent what you're planning to do, you give them the power to stop you. In chess, as in life, your next move is your most valuable secret. Her grandfather had grown up poor in Mexico, but through careful planning and strategic silence, he had built a successful construction business in America. He never announced his intentions. He never revealed his strategies. He simply executed his plans while others were still talking about theirs. Rebecca remembered this lesson when she started planning her business. While her colleagues at the marketing firm complained about their jobs and talked endlessly about their dreams of starting their own companies someday, Rebecca remained quiet. She listened to their conversations, but she never participated with details about her own plans. When Sarah, a colleague in the next cubicle, would say, "I'm thinking about starting a freelance marketing business," Rebecca would simply nod and say, "That sounds interesting." She never mentioned that she had already registered her business name, designed her logo, and had 3 potential clients lined up. When David from the accounting department would talk about his idea for a digital marketing company during lunch breaks, Rebecca would encourage him with phrases like, "You should definitely look into that," while never revealing that she had already developed proprietary software tools that would give her a significant competitive advantage. This strategic silence served Rebecca in ways she hadn't even anticipated. By listening to her colleagues' half-formed plans and pipe dreams, she learned what not to do. She heard about the mistakes they were planning to make, the challenges they hadn't considered, and the market gaps they had missed. Meanwhile, Rebecca was taking action. She spent her weekends meeting with potential clients, not to sell her services yet, but to understand their needs. She was building her client base before she even opened her doors. She was testing her strategies on a small scale, refining her approach, and preparing for launch. 8 months into her planning, something interesting happened at her day job. The company announced they were launching a new division focused on small business marketing. They were looking for someone to lead this initiative, and several of Rebecca's colleagues applied for the position. Sarah applied, talking about her experience and her ideas for serving small businesses. David applied, presenting his vision for digital marketing strategies. But here's what Rebecca understood that they didn't. The company had been watching and listening. They had heard Sarah and David talking about their plans to eventually start their own businesses. They had heard them express dissatisfaction with their current roles. They had heard them reveal their true intentions to use this position as a stepping stone to their own ventures. Rebecca, on the other hand, had never revealed her plans. When she applied for the position, she focused solely on how she could benefit the company. She presented strategies and insights that impressed management, insights she had gained through her secret client research. She demonstrated a level of understanding about small business needs that her colleagues couldn't match because they had been talking while she had been learning. Rebecca got the promotion, but more importantly, she used this position to gain even more knowledge, more connections, and more experience that would benefit her future business. She was being paid to prepare for her own success, while her colleagues were still dreaming about theirs. 2 years later, Rebecca quietly left the company and launched her consultancy. She had learned everything she needed to know, built the relationships she needed to build, and saved the money she needed to save. Her business was profitable within 3 months because she had spent 2 years preparing in silence. Sarah and David were both still at the company, still talking about their plans to start their own businesses someday. They had revealed their intentions too early, been passed over for advancement because management questioned their loyalty, and were now stuck in positions that offered limited growth. Rebecca's success wasn't just about having a good business plan. It was about understanding that announcing your next move is like showing your cards before the betting is finished. When people know what you're planning to do, they can prepare to compete with you, undermine you, or steal your ideas. Your next move is your competitive advantage. The moment you share it, you lose that advantage. Intelligent people understand that execution speaks louder than announcement, and results speak louder than intentions. When you keep your next move to yourself, you maintain the element of surprise. You preserve your energy for action instead of explanation. You avoid the resistance that comes when people try to talk you out of your plans or point out all the reasons why your idea won't work. Now let me tell you about Jonathan Pierce, a man who learned the second secret the hard way. Jonathan was a talented architect who had been running his own firm for 5 years. Business had been good, but like many small business owners, he faced periods of uncertainty and challenge. The difference between Jonathan and most people is what he did when those challenges came in the early days of his struggle. Jonathan made the mistake that destroys more dreams than any external force ever could. He started sharing his problems with everyone who would listen. When clients were slow to pay their invoices and cash flow became tight, Jonathan would mention it to other business owners at networking events. When a major project fell through and left him scrambling to cover his overhead, he shared his frustration with friends at dinner parties. "Times are tough right now," he would say. "I'm not sure how I'm going to make payroll this month." He thought he was being honest and authentic. He thought people would respect his transparency and maybe even help him through difficult times. But what Jonathan discovered was one of the harshest truths about human nature when you share your struggles. You don't attract helpers, you attract vultures. Within weeks of Jonathan sharing his financial difficulties, strange things began to happen. Potential clients who had been interested in his services suddenly became hesitant. "We heard you're having some cash flow issues," one potential client said. "We need to work with someone who's financially stable." Projects that should have been straightforward became complicated as clients questioned his ability to complete the work. But the worst part wasn't the clients he lost. The worst part was what happened with his existing relationships. Other architects in the city who had previously referred clients to him stopped sending business his way. They later explained to mutual contacts that they couldn't recommend someone who might not be around to finish the projects. His complaints had branded him as unreliable before he had actually become unreliable. Jonathan's brother-in-law, who had always been supportive, started questioning Jonathan's business decisions at family gatherings. "Maybe you should consider going back to working for someone else," he would suggest. "Architecture is a tough business, and maybe you're not cut out for entrepreneurship." The constant conversation about his struggles began to affect Jonathan's own mindset. Every morning became a reminder of his problems instead of an opportunity to find solutions. He was spending more energy explaining his difficulties than he was spending on overcoming them. But then Jonathan met an older architect named William Chen, who had built one of the most successful firms in the state. Over coffee one morning, William shared something that changed Jonathan's perspective completely. "Young man," William said, "I've been in this business for 30 years. And I've seen talented architects fail, not because they lacked skill, but because they lacked discretion. When you broadcast your struggles, you're programming yourself for failure and inviting others to lose confidence in you." William explained that he had faced numerous challenges over the years, including periods where he nearly lost everything. But he had learned to handle these struggles privately. Instead of complaining to everyone around him, he would identify the specific help he needed and approach the right people with specific requests. why I needed bridge financing, William said. I didn't tell everyone I was broke. I approached 3 banks with a solid plan for how I would use the money and how I would pay it back. When I needed new clients, I didn't tell everyone business was slow. I developed a marketing strategy and executed it quietly. The difference, William explained, was between seeking solutions and seeking sympathy. When you share your struggles broadly, you're usually seeking sympathy, not solutions. But sympathy doesn't pay bills or solve problems. Focused action does. Jonathan took William's advice to heart. He stopped sharing his business challenges in casual conversation. Instead, he channeled that energy into finding specific solutions. When he needed help, he approached the right people with clear requests. His mindset shifted from victim to problem solver within 6 months. Jonathan's business had turned around completely, but more importantly, his reputation had recovered. People began to see him as reliable and capable again because he had stopped reinforcing the narrative of struggle. There's a woman named Elena who runs a small bakery in a neighborhood that most people had given up on. Every morning at 5 o'clock, Elena arrives at her shop to begin baking fresh bread, pastries, and cakes that fill the entire block with the most wonderful aroma. But Elena does something that most business owners never think to do, and it has made her one of the most successful and beloved figures in her community. 3 years ago, Elena noticed that many of the elderly residents in her neighborhood were struggling to afford basic groceries. Social security checks weren't stretching far enough, and pride prevented many of them from asking for help. Elena could have ignored the situation, focused solely on her business, and justified it by saying she had her own bills to pay. Instead, she made a decision that would change everything. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Elena would bake an extra dozen loaves of bread and several dozen rolls. She would package them carefully, and when her regular business hours ended, she would walk through the neighborhood delivering fresh bread to 12 elderly residents. She never announced what she was doing. She never posted about it on social media. She never told her customers or her family about these deliveries. When Mrs. Patterson, an 84-year-old widow, would open her door to find a bag of fresh bread with a simple note that said, "Enjoy," Elena would already be walking away. When Mr. Thompson, a retired factory worker living on a fixed income, discovered warm rolls on his doorstep, Elena made sure she was never seen making the delivery. Elena understood something that most people miss completely. She understood that the moment you publicize your good deeds, you change their nature entirely. When you announce your charitable acts, you're no longer doing them for the people you're helping. You're doing them for the recognition, the praise, and the way they make you feel about yourself. But Elena's silent generosity created something much more powerful than recognition ever could. Within months, word began to spread through the neighborhood. Not because Elena was talking, but because the recipients were talking. Mrs. Patterson mentioned to her neighbor that someone had been leaving fresh bread at her door. Mr. Thompson told his son during their weekly phone call about the mysterious bread deliveries. The elderly residents began comparing notes and realized they weren't the only ones receiving this kindness. But here's what Elena discovered that changed her business forever. These elderly residents had children and grandchildren who visited them regularly. They had friends and neighbors who noticed the fresh bread in their kitchens. They had stories to tell about the kindness they were receiving from someone in the neighborhood who cared enough to help without seeking credit. People began asking where the bread came from, and the elderly residents would point toward Elena's bakery. But they didn't just recommend the bakery because of the free bread. They recommended it because Elena had demonstrated something rare in business and in life. She had shown that she genuinely cared about people, not just profit. Elena's customer base began to grow rapidly, but not because she was advertising her charitable acts. Her business grew because she had built a reputation for genuine caring in a world where most business owners only care about sales. People started driving from other neighborhoods to buy from the bakery where the owner helped elderly residents without expecting anything in return. Local churches began ordering their baked goods for events. Families started choosing Elena's bakery for birthday cakes and wedding cakes because they wanted to support someone who supported their community. Business owners in the area began referring customers to Elena because they respected what she was doing. But the most remarkable thing happened when Elena's lease came up for renewal. The building owner, who had been planning to raise the rent significantly, decided to keep it the same after hearing from multiple tenants about Elena's quiet charity work. The owner's own mother lived in the neighborhood and had been one of the recipients of Elena's bread deliveries. Elena never sought recognition for her good deeds, but her good deeds created recognition for her business that no amount of advertising could have achieved. Her silent generosity had built a community of supporters who became her most powerful marketing force. Now I want to bring these three secrets together and show you how they work as a complete system for intelligent living. There's a man named Anthony Washington who understood all three principles and used them to transform not just his own life, but the lives of everyone around him. Anthony worked as a security guard at a downtown office building, but he had dreams that extended far beyond his uniform and his minimum wage paycheck. Every night after his shift ended, Anthony would go home to his small apartment and study. He was teaching himself computer programming, business management, and financial planning. He had a vision of starting a security company that would revolutionize how businesses protected their assets. But Anthony had learned from watching others make costly mistakes. He kept his plans completely to himself. While other security guards complained about their jobs and talked about what they would do if they had the chance, Anthony listened and learned. He never mentioned that he was studying business or that he had already identified potential clients who were dissatisfied with their current security services. When Anthony faced challenges, and there were many, he handled them with the same strategic silence. When his car broke down and he had to walk 3 miles to work for 2 weeks, he never complained to his co-workers. When his apartment's heating system failed in the middle of winter and he had to sleep in extra layers for a month while saving money for repairs, he never mentioned his discomfort to anyone. Instead of broadcasting his struggles, Anthony used them as fuel for his determination. Every hardship became evidence that he needed to accelerate his plans. Not reasons to give up on them, but perhaps most importantly, Anthony began helping others without seeking recognition. He noticed that several elderly people in his apartment building were afraid to leave their units after dark because the neighborhood had become unsafe. So Anthony quietly adjusted his schedule. On his nights off, he would position himself in the building's lobby, reading his business books while providing an unofficial security presence. He never announced what he was doing. He never asked for thanks. He simply made himself available so that Mrs. Johnson could feel safe taking her laundry to the basement, and Mr. Williams could walk to the corner store for groceries after 2 years of silent preparation. Anthony launched his security company. His first clients were businesses where he had worked as a guard, businesses that had observed his professionalism and dedication. His reputation for reliability had been built through consistent action, not constant talk. His company grew rapidly because Anthony had mastered the 3 secrets of intelligent people. He had kept his plans private until he was ready to execute them. He had handled his struggles without broadcasting them to the world. And he had built his reputation through silent service rather than self-promotion. Today, Anthony's company employs over 50 people and serves some of the largest businesses in the city. But more importantly, Anthony has created opportunities for others who were exactly where he used to be. He hires security guards who show the same quiet determination he once possessed. And he teaches them the same 3 secrets that transformed his life. This is what happens when you master the art of strategic silence. Your next move remains powerful because it's unexpected. Your struggles become stepping stones because you focus on solutions instead of complaints. Your good deeds multiply their impact because they're motivated by genuine care rather than the desire for recognition. The choice is yours. You can continue living like most people, sharing everything with everyone, and wondering why your dreams never become reality. Or you can choose to live intelligently, understanding that some things are too valuable to share, too important to broadcast, too powerful to announce. Remember Marcus and how his transparency destroyed his opportunity. Remember Rebecca and how her silence secured her success. Remember Jonathan and how keeping his struggles private allowed him to overcome them. Remember Elena and how her quiet generosity built a business empire. Remember Anthony and how mastering all three secrets transformed him from a security guard into a successful entrepreneur. The most intelligent thing you can do starting today is to identify these three areas in your own life and begin practicing strategic silence. Your future success depends not on what you reveal, but on what you have the wisdom to keep to yourself.